right, folks, I had a Wi-Fi issue. Sorry, 3 minutes behind, but I'm ready to go with our virtual tour.
Well, thank you, President Richardson. We appreciate you being here today. I'm David Salgado. I'm the Regional Affairs Officer from Imperial County. I cover Coachella Valleys and Imperial County. So a little bit about me. I've been with SCAG for 4 years. I live out here in Imperial. I was born and raised in Imperial County. Imperial County is very dear to me, so I appreciate the opportunity to represent SCAG and the region out here in Imperial County. We have great representatives who have all put a great foot forward to put this together for you, and I'm excited about this presentation. We've got really bright minds in the Zoom room right now to answer any questions you may have. You know, we have a lot of the members participating as well. So I'll pass it on to Supervisor Blancarte, who's in the room as well.
All right, and Supervisor, are you going to make sure we know all the electeds on the in the meeting? I'm going to hear from everyone. David?
I can go around the room and introduce if that's helpful. We have Councilmember Bill Hodge from the City of Calexico, who sits on the EHD and Arena Policy Subcommittees. Councilmember Past President Cheryl Villegas Walker is in the Zoom meeting as well. She's City of El Centro. Appreciate her being here. We have Councilmember James Predmore from the City of Hopeville, who also sits on the Regional Council and Policy Committee as well. Anna Beltran was scheduled to be here, but she had something come up. She sits on the Energy and Environment Committee. She was not available, but she sends her best to all of us. And we have a lot of Imperial County employees from the County Air Pollution Control District. We'll get into that later. And then Mark Baza and his team from ICTC, the Imperial County Transportation Commission, are here as well. So we have a great group here together.
Fantastic. Well, thanks a lot, Supervisor.
Okay, we're unmuted. Great. Well, Rex, great to see you. I missed the opportunity that we have to get together. As we go through the presentations, I'll let some of the people introduce themselves. But I should note that in the room also with me, I've got County CEO Tony Rahudes and the Air Pollution District Officer, Matt Desert. I think that Stella Jimenez, the District Director for Assembly Member Garcia, was also joining us. Don't know if she made it online or she'll be joining us a little bit later. You know, traditionally, the leadership for SCAG comes and does a tour, usually it's right in the middle of summer if it can be done that way when it's 1:15, 1:18. And so that adds a different flavor that we can't convey. But, you know, they say that a picture tells 1,000 words. So we thought with our team, which we'll be introducing as we go along, put a video together that perhaps with the exception that we did not have smell-o-vision that we could add to the video. But we thought this would be a quick way of giving you a tour, and then we can go from there. So if we can get that video started, we'll start the presentation with that.
Thank you, Supervisor.
Bordering Arizona to the east, Mexicali, Mexico to the south, San Diego County to the west, and Riverside County to the north, Imperial County was the last county to be established in California in 1907. Imperial County is approximately 180,000 residents strong, which live and work within our 7 cities that include Brawley, Calexico, Calipatria, El Centro, Hopeville, Imperial, and Westmoreland, and our 8 unincorporated areas including Bombay Beach, Heber, Nyland, Ocotillo, Palo Verde, Salton City, Sealy, and Winter Haven. Imperial County is a large county in scale, encompassing 4,284 square miles, and it is the 9th largest in size in California. Rainfall in our desert averages less than 2 inches per year, Therefore, we are relying on the Colorado River for our water supply that is distributed via the All-American Canal by the Imperial Irrigation District. Gravity flow canals supply water to our cities and agricultural fields through a complex system created over 100 years ago. With approximately 500,000 acres of farmland, agriculture is the #1 private industry in Imperial County. In 2018, the gross production of Imperial County agricultural commodities was valued at $2.2 billion. Agriculture's total economic contribution to Imperial County is estimated at over $4.5 billion. Our farmers and ranchers produce fruits, vegetables, forage, and feed for the nation. Between Imperial County and our neighboring Yuma, Arizona, approximately 90% of the nation's winter vegetables are produced in the desert Southwest. Imperial County is consistently ranked in the top 10 agricultural producing counties in California. Of course, beef is king in Imperial County and has consistently been ranked the #1 gross value commodity. Averaging 380,000 head of cattle, you can confidently say that there are twice as many cows than people in Imperial County. Farmers in Imperial County enjoy the rewards of year-round sunshine and the perfect climate to grow commodities such as artichokes, zucchini, and are at the top of international suppliers of many forage commodities such as alfalfa, alfalfa seed, and Sudan. In 1905, heavy rainfall and snowmelt caused the Colorado River to swell. What is known as the Salton Sea was formed when the Colorado River floodwater breached an irrigation canal being constructed in Imperial Valley and flooded into the Salton Sink. The Salton Sea functions as an agricultural sump and an important home for wildlife. Although it has only existed for about 100 years, the Salton Sea has become an extremely critical resource for many species of resident and migratory birds, including several specimens of special concern. Due to the significant loss of wetlands in California and other areas, the Salton Sea ecosystem has become one of the most important wetlands for birds in North America and supports some of the highest levels of avian biodiversity in the southwestern United States, more specifically in the Pacific Flyway. Later, you will get to hear about the Salton Sea from Katie Barnworth, Special Projects Coordinator from Imperial County Air Pollution Control District. Resources are abundant in Imperial County, an extensive amount of renewable resources, including geothermal, wind, and solar. The Salton Sea known geothermal resource area has an estimated geothermal potential to produce more than 2,000 megawatts. It is the second largest geothermal resource area in the United States. There are currently 11 geothermal power stations operating within that area that are producing approximately 400 megawatts of energy. Unlike solar panels or wind turbines, geothermal plants can generate emission-free baseload renewable energy around the clock. The technology involves tapping naturally heated underground reservoirs to create steam, which runs turbines. Renewable energy is a large industry in Imperial County as well, and we are home to many solar farms and a wind farm. Since the passage of SB 1078, when California established a renewable portfolio standard program that initially required that 20% of electricity's retail sales must be served by renewable resources, which of course has since been incrementally increased to 100%, energy providers have produced and focused their eyes in Imperial County to supply their needs. Summer temperatures may be extreme for 4 months of the year in Imperial County. However, the winter's temperatures average in the 70s. This provides ideal climate for outdoor recreation opportunities. The Imperial Sand Dunes, often referred to as Glamis on the north end or Buttercup on the south, offers off-road vehicle activities to visitors coming from near and far. The massive dunes, one of the largest of its kind in North America, measures approximately 5 miles wide and 45 miles long and extends across the Mexican border. Camp Racer West, that brings off-road enthusiasts from across the nation to Glamis, is the biggest Halloween party in Southern California. Duners camp out for several days, creating what is almost like a mini city, and gather in select hangout areas where thousands of people line up to watch Duners make a run down the drag strip throughout the day and congregate at the bottom of the biggest dune, Oldsmobile Hill, for sunset runs. Although Halloween weekend is typically one of the largest populated times in Imperial Sand Dunes, other holidays and off weekends attract tens of thousands of visitors, making this an annual positive contribution to our economy. Another contributing factor are the winter visitors we receive from residents of colder climates, such as Canada and northern Midwestern states. Although we expect this year will be a bit different due to the current COVID-19 pandemic and the cancellation of Camp Racer, we still anticipate a high visitation number from off-road enthusiasts throughout the fall, winter, and the beginning of spring. We are working closely with state and federal partners to ensure measures of enforcement in place to stop congregations, gatherings, in an effort to stop the spread of COVID-19. With a portion of the Colorado River located in eastern side of Imperial County, boaters and sports enthusiasts flood the area to enjoy nature's aquatic beauty and resource. Lastly, another significant player in our economy, culture, and composition of our community is our proximity to Mexico, the capital of the state of Baja California. This is an urban metropolitan city with an estimated population of more than 1.5 million people, with a fence separating it from the southmost city, Calexico. The residents of Mexicali support our local economy, stores, and it's estimated that Mexican shoppers spend $1.2 billion a year in Imperial County. Additionally, the proximity to the Mexican maquiladora offers tremendous opportunities for international trade, but I'll leave that for Mr. Mark Basa, Executive Director of the Imperial County Transportation Commission, to expand on. I hope that I've been able to describe a good picture for you of Imperial Valley. Thank you for joining us this afternoon, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the presentations that you will receive from representatives of the county. Thank you.
All right. I tried, you know, I sure wish my narration capacities were as good as our people that put the video together, and it would have really done it some justice. But yeah, that's produced in-house. What I like to do before we get going and go on to the next presentation, I like to go around the room here and allow each person to introduce themselves. And then once we're done here, I like to go over to SCAG and have David either facilitate the introduction, and then David, you get to call the next agency, and so on and so on. So we'll start around the room here with introductions.
Tony Rojotis, County Executive Officer for the County of Imperial.
Yeah, Matt Desert, Imperial County Air Pollution Control Officer.
Rebecca Terrazas-Baxter, Intergovernmental Relations Director for the County of Imperial.
Katie Burnworth, Special Projects Coordinator with Imperial County Air Pollution Control District.
And Gil Rebel, I work for the Imperial County Air District, but also assisting the CEO's office during this pandemic.
And Gil and Becky are the ones that really worked on putting that video together, and I'm grateful to them. David, over to you.
Sure.
Mr. Pontate, I'm over here as well for Belen Leon from the Imperial County Air Pollution.
Sorry, Belen, I forgot you. You're in the other room. I apologize.
It's okay, thank you.
Well,
Councilman Dodge?
thanks to all of you for coming together. You certainly have assembled all the right people. So I'm certainly impressed by the table that you assembled. And if I could just say, I thought it was a pretty incredible video. I've never been on sand dunes before, I'll tell you that much. And we need to, I don't know if this is something you do regularly. I don't know if this is what folks in Imperial County do, is sand dunes, but I certainly would love to try it out. Maybe not when it's 140 degrees, maybe it's when it's a little bit cooler, but I certainly would love to come visit when the time is right.
Love to have you visit when the time is right. David?
Councilmember Hodge?
You're muted, Bill.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, Calexico City Councilman Bill Hodge and member of SCAG for over 10 years.
I see Mr. Baza.
Mark Baza, Executive Director for the Imperial County Transportation Commission.
Past President Walker.
We doing introductions again? I thought we were moving on to the next presentation. Hi, Rex. Good to see you. Thank you so
I jumped
much.
the gun on presentations earlier. Sorry.
Awesome sauce. Okay, we're good.
The Councilmember Predmore.
Hi, Rex. This is James Predmore, Mayor of Oakville. Good to see you.
Likewise.
It's been a while.
It's been a while for everyone. Right.
Yeah.
See ICTC staff.
Marlene?
Hello, everyone. This is Marlene Flores with ICTC. I'm a transportation planner.
Thank you.
And then we have a couple other staff persons in the room, my counterparts. I'll let them introduce themselves.
Javier Cartagena with SCAG. I'm the Regional Services Manager for the department. Happy to be here. Thank you.
And Jonathan is in the room as well. There he is.
Yeah, good afternoon. This is Jonathan Hughes. I'm David's counterpart up in Orange County and just here to watch and learn from the master, Mr. Salgado. So pleasure to be here and hope it's a fruitful conversation for everybody.
All right.
Oh, hi. Sorry, this is Rachel Wagner. I am also a Regional Affairs Officer, David's counterpart, and I cover Ventura County, so I'm just seeing how it's done. Thanks.
Right.
I think that covers everybody except for your staff person, President Richardson.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Alana Grant. I'm the Policy Director for Councilmember Rex Richardson.
Thanks, Alana. So we have a few presentations lined up, and I'll just pass it right over to Mark. He'll be the next one, Executive Director from ICTC.
Thank you, David. Marlene is going to load up our presentation for us. Well, welcome, Rex. We'll just give you a little overview of ICTC as soon as we get started here. But ICTC was created from Senate Bill 607 back in 2009, and we became the County Transportation Commission with responsibilities for transportation, regional transit and transportation agency for Imperial County. We are one of the 6 counties of the SCAG region, which you already know, the largest MPO in the US. And ICTC is also one of 25 self-help counties in California with our own local Measure D sales tax program. Next slide. So we're going to highlight our top regional and local project for Imperial County, and I'm going to ask Councilmember Cheryl Villegas Walker to highlight this project as well as the city's project.
Okay, hi Rex. So I'm going to be really brief here because I didn't realize they were going to be doing remodeling at our office at the exact same time I get called up for this presentation. So actually, Mark, because that is literally right outside my door, I'm going to kick this back to you so you don't have to listen to that. All right, thank you. Apologies.
So I'll take it from there. But this project has been in progress for probably 20 years now, going back to our long-range plan 20 years ago. It was an interchange that was there existing, but we didn't have a southbound connection because there was little development to the south at that time. That's the only best answer we can figure out at that time. But ever since then, we knew that there was a need for a southbound connection. And so that's what the whole interchange is being. We tore down recently the bridge, and we're creating a new bridge with ramps, all new ramps. And then the city of El Centro is creating the Imperial Avenue extension to the south. Marlene. So here's an illustration of the interchange that is proposed. The blue lines show what is proposed to be modified, as well as then the red is what's we're removing. Next slide, Marlene. And here's a sample of what the city's project is. Their initial project is highlighted in red. That's their phase 1, and phase 2 will be done concurrently with those 2 phases. The total project cost is $13.2 million for the city's project, and they have a proposed extension all the way to McCabe Road to the south. And what's so important about this extension to the south and the interchange, and that is we're creating a new area of economic development for the city. We're creating better traffic circulation to the south of the Interstate 8. We have 3 interchanges that are right within that area. The next one is to Forest Street, and then there's Dogwood. And this new extension will create a real big traffic circulation improvement for Imperial County, because everything that comes through the county and within the county intersects at these 3 interchanges. So that's our local biggest local project, and the project is under construction with Caltrans forces. From here, we want to give you an overview of all of our border projects, and we show the entire California-Mexico border, our counterparts to San Diego to the west, and their ports of entry. But we have 3 ports of entry that are very important to Imperial County, as Supervisor briefly touched on, and we'll talk a little bit more about it. Starting from the west is Calexico West, which is our largest person crossing port of entry. And then the Calexico East is also person crossing, but it's also our only commercial vehicle crossing, and we'll talk more about that as we talk about that project. And then all the way down, all the way to the east is the Andrade Algodones port of entry. It's a very small port, is mostly a tourist port for folks that go to the city of Algodones in Mexico for medical purposes and for tourist day out to go to restaurants, etc. But the medical tourism is a big deal for both Imperial residents, Mexicali residents, as well as the snowbirds, as Supervisor talked about, that come into our county. They are able to get the cheaper pharmacy, cheaper dental services, and medical services at all across the Mexican border. Many of our residents in Imperial County choose to, and their insurances allow them to use medical services in Mexicali. Next slide. So this is our big border project, and the top picture shows what the existing crossing looks like, and that we're adding 4 new lanes. We'll be having 2 northbound lanes for cars, 2 more northbound lanes for trucks. And why are we expending a lot of effort to do this? Well, the data to the top right shows that last year, $17 billion in imports and exports traveled through that port of entry last year. And all the number of crossers northbound, as well as the northbound trucks. And why, the delay and we've done studies that showed what the delay is to our economic our local economy, as well as the state and national economy. So there is a big reason, and we've talked to you a little bit about how we're funding this project. Next slide. This is the details of the project, where we're going to add the 4 lanes on the east side, and then we're going to shift over to add 2 more lanes on the west side for autos, and add 2 more lanes for trucks on the other side. Next slide. So here we're showing that our project cost is estimated at $25 million to $32.5 million. And the reason for the variation or the range is that we have $25 million funded, and part of that is a $20 million grant that we received from USDOT from the last Federal Highways Better Utilizing Investments Leverage Development, otherwise known as BUILD program. So we were one of 2 projects in California that were awarded in that last go around of BUILD. And then we also got $3 million from the CTC, the Trade Corridor Program, to kick off our project, to complete all of the necessary project approval and environmental documents, of which we have completed. And we're now in the process of going out to procurement with RFQ and RFP process for a design build, which we don't do normally. A lot of design build, well, certainly in Imperial and throughout the state. But we are, in order to get this project done and meet our commitments to the federal government for the award that they gave us. Plus, we have some local contribution from our own Measure D program for this project. And the pending project is about $7.5 million. And what that will do for us is allow us to, it's not crucial work, but it is important work if we're able to get the award. And that is to do some deferred maintenance improvements to the bridge. That the bridge is about 20 years old, and the federal government hadn't done any maintenance on that bridge. So that part of that money will help us with that. It will also add a shoulder, 8-foot shoulder on the commercial vehicle side. And then lastly, it will allow us to put a canopy over the pedestrian pathway over the bridge, which is, in high temperatures, you can imagine that that'll be a big benefit to those who cross there. Next slide. So we're going to highlight, we're going to go back to the west, and we're going to show you the Calexico West Port of Entry. And last September 2018, the federal government completed the expansion of that port of entry, adding all those improvements, 10 new northbound lanes for cars, 6 new southbound lanes, a new head house, which is their operations for Customs and Border Protection, as well as canopies for their secondary area. Next slide. So this is a project that Border Patrol and GSA have under construction right now. It's $191 million, and it is primarily to create some improvements, some additional lanes for northbound lanes, which would add 6 more northbound lanes, as well as 5 new southbound lanes. And some parking, et cetera. But it still is a big improvement. That is funded and is under construction today. The lower right picture is some of the improvements that our counterparts in Mexico are creating. You'll see in the green area, there's an interchange that they've created that is creating flow from the west side of the city of Mexicali to the east, from the east side of the downtown area, and some other improvements. So we're trying, we try to work together on all of these improvements to keep our border crossings flowing. Just one of the things I'd share, between the Calexico West and the Calexico East Port of Entry, daily, 54,000 people cross into our county every day. Now, these are pre-COVID-19 numbers, but that just gives you an order of magnitude about the significance of our neighbors to the south, and they're part of our community. If you learn anything about what we say today is Mexico is our neighbor. We try, yes, we have a fence, and yes, we have laws that prohibit us from easily crossing that border, but we share the same air. We have some same challenges together, and we try to work together. And if I have an opportunity, I'll share more about what we do with our partners in Mexico. Next slide. So we're going to show you a little video of the improvements that were done in phase 1. Coming from the west over to the area where they constructed the improvements. What you're immediately seeing is the new southbound access into Mexico, and our Mexican counterparts and their inspection facilities. Then you're approaching the northbound lanes from Mexico into our U.S. inspection facilities.
How's the relationship as it relates to the workforce? Is a portion of the workforce, let's say are the jobs primarily on our side of the fence or on their side of the fence? Which side provides most of the workforce?
I would say for the people crossing, it's mostly Mexicans coming over to work here. There's a lot of farm labor that crosses the border. They're all legal residents that can cross over. And then, there are people that, work for different industries, administrative or government agencies to retail, et cetera.
Right.
One of the studies that the county had recently done, in addition to people that work and or go to school in the U.S. side of the border, that those crossers amount to about $1 billion of annual retail sales in our county.
Hey, Rex, I wanted to weigh in real quick while we have a temporary relief here. The border crossing with regard to the employment, at least at one point, the hospital was considering housing all of our employees that currently live in Mexico here so that they would be available during this whole pandemic, as well as we have, I don't know if Mark mentioned this and maybe you heard, that we also have a number of school students that cross daily to attend schools in the U.S.
Okay. Yeah. The next slide, Marlene. So we're creating a transit center in the city of Calexico. We're in design right now, and what's unique about this transit center, and we've completed a number of transit centers throughout our county, but this will likely be our largest one, in part because we're providing a transit center for our own Imperial Valley Transit buses. We're also providing a place for Greyhound that if they would choose to like to be there. We have farm labor buses that come into the city of Calexico. We have 2 private shuttle operators that we're making the spots available for them, as well as, in the future, this being a mobility hub that could be for rideshare companies to have pickup and drop off and those sorts of things. This is the concept of what we like to build. And as I mentioned, we're completing our environmental, and we're starting our early design phase of this project.
Mm-hmm.
So next slide.
That was great.
Yeah. Thank you. So that's, if I have a moment, I could share with you, the partnership that we have created with our partners in Mexico. If you're
Yeah, I'd love to hear about that.
Next slide, Marlene. So we back in 2016, we created an Imperial Mexicali binational alliance, and we created together with our partners in Mexico, primarily the state and local agencies for transportation, as well as economic development agencies or private entities on both sides of the border. And we have 4 primary goals: economic development, education, infrastructure, and environment. And we meet bi-monthly, but with all of those elements, we have working groups that work on different areas of those goals. Here's the MOU entities that signed the MOU. The 2 are the Imperial County Transportation Commission and the Imperial Valley Economic Development Corporation, as well as our counterparts on Mexico for transportation and economic development. So, and we have a number of participating agencies, including our federal partners on both sides of the border. We have also SCAG is part of that group that attends. So when we have these meetings bi-monthly, we have anywhere from 30 to 40 people that are committed to attend these meetings. And
I'd love to attend one, actually.
Really, we'd love to have you. We'll make sure you get an invite to join us, and that would be great. We give good updates, certainly for us, ICTC and Caltrans and et cetera. We try to talk about our updates to our projects or our federal partners and their border crossing projects. But here's a sample of some of the projects that these work groups are working on. I'll just give you a sense, I've talked about a lot about the infrastructure part, but our economic development partners, they actually work together to promote both the Imperial and Mexicali region. We try to be selfless in the point that we know that we have infrastructure, we have the highway infrastructure, we have labor force to handle logistics on our side of the border. And our partners to the south, they have a labor force to do the manufacturing. So we try to make that point when they go out to market the region. They even also include San Diego and their Tijuana counterparts to talk about a mega region, Baja California mega region. But looking at the environmental issues that our own Air Pollution Control District works with their counterparts in Baja California and the state of Baja California. We have a new river that we share, and if you've heard anything, and that could be a whole presentation to itself one day if you like. Yep. But we all have challenges with that new river. They have a lot of wastewater that comes into it, and we have our own issues with farm.
How long has this alliance been in place?
Since 2016.
This is incredible.
Yeah, it's been a great partnership. And then our most recent one that we started as a goal is education. And why about education? As Cheryl mentioned, there's a lot of kids that come across the border to go to school here. But we have a San Diego State University campus just across the border in the city of Calexico, but they also have a campus in Brawley. And then we have a very large community college that a lot of those students go there to make their 2-year commitments. And that community college is great for the transition for a lot of students to go straight to the 4-year schools from there. And it works. I mean, we see it all the time with many of our folks in this call have been a part of that whole transition. But we wanted to give you a sense of what we're doing with our partners in Mexico, and it is a great partnership. We try not to let any of the national politics affect what we do. We just kind of take those as it is what it is, so to speak. But we try to just focus on what we can do together. I mean, there's some other great examples that our Air Pollution Control District and others are doing to create air quality monitors along the border. Our own California EPA and CARB have contributed to paying for some monitors on the Mexican side of the border, which, you know, you'd say, well, why would we spend money? We share the same air. So there's a reason, there's a benefit for all of us to improve air quality in that border region. And, and you know, unfortunately, Mexicali has been known as one of the worst contributors to air quality emissions in their own country. But they're trying to look at the standards that say that our own California EPA or CARB or our Air Pollution Control District manages, and they're trying to adopt some of those same rules with the communications and work they do together. So that's what we wanted to share, Rex, and we're glad to have you.
Well, thanks a lot. This is really innovative. I've learned a lot about. I didn't know very much about Imperial County except for what I've learned over the years from Cheryl Viejas Walker. And I gotta tell you, these are things that I think we should highlight. Just the fact that you're able to sort of look at those four categories from infrastructure and education and workforce and air quality. If you just think about regionalism in general, cities can learn from that. I know that, you know, you have sub-regional COGs that kind of talk, but sometimes there's more that you can do if you really think about it. I think about my city of Long Beach, right? We have Signal Hill right in the center of our city like a donut, surrounded by our city on all sides. You've got Lakewood and Paramount and Seal Beach and Carson and Compton. Well, that means we have multiple school districts. We focus on Long Beach Unified. We also have Paramount, multiple college districts, ABC, we've got Compton College. And I'm just thinking about how we, just my own city, could benefit thinking about issues that we all have, from, you know, issues related to public safety, issues related to fire, things that really don't, you know, the border is an invisible thing. And we can learn from what you've done around your border on how we can do even locally. And if we think about SCAG's really good at that, but I think the fact we're made up of cities, 191 cities, we need to be able to synthesize what we've learned on this larger regional level to how a council member can help make a difference in their own community. So that's what I've learned so far, and I look forward to learning more about the partnership and the infrastructure that you all are engaged in Imperial County.
Thanks. So I have, you know, most of your representatives on the SCAG board and committees are all ICTC board members as well. That's how committed these folks are to what we do in our region.
Right. Absolutely. Thank you.
Thanks, Mark. So we have another presentation from Belen at the Imperial County Air Pollution Control District for, I think she's going to cover AB 617.
Okay.
Hi, good afternoon.
Hi.
Okay, yeah, this is the presentation. Good afternoon, my name is Belen Leon, and I'm the project manager at the Air Pollution Control District. I oversee the grants, in particular the Binational Border 2020, where the APCD, in conjunction with the Air Quality Task Force, has been part of for over 20 years, and have participants from the federal, state, and local government attend, as well as the NGOs and the public. We work on education, awareness, and small-scale projects over at the border in Mexicali. We alternate meetings from Mexicali to Calexico. And well, today the focus is the AB 617 program, which I also oversee with the staff here in APCD, and which is the focus today. Go to the next project, next slide. There you go. Okay. In response to AB 617. CARB established the Community Air Protection Program, known as CAP, which focuses on reducing exposure in the communities most impacted by air pollution. The community of El Centro, Heber, and Calexico, known as the corridor, was selected by CARB as the first-year AB 617 community. Our community was one of the 10 first communities selected under AB 617. The geographic proximity of these 3 areas lent to being grouped together as one single AB 617 nominated community, known as the corridor. And I say this because there's other 10 communities that, another 7 communities that were selected, but like South Coast has 3 communities under one umbrella. San Diego has 2, San Joaquin has 2. So for us here in the Imperial Valley, El Centro, Heber, and Calexico, they grouped them together into one because we're so close to each other.
Right.
So that's an important note. The Air District opted to participate on both a monitoring program as well as an emission reduction program. We had the option of choosing either or. The Imperial County chose to do both. Community Emission Reduction Program, for short the CERP, was adopted by the California Air Resources Board in January of 2020. And the CAMP did not have to be approved by the board, but was approved by the steering committee in October of 2019. Next slide, please. So understanding the community, Mr. Blancarte and Mr. Baza did a really good job in explaining how our community works. The Imperial County is located primarily in the desert region of the Southern California and shares an international border with Mexico. The community contains relatively few PM 2.5 stationary sources, but can be experienced significant emissions from from traffic, particularly near Calexico, and the international ports of entry into the United States. The community exists, we're in an area where we're designated non-attainment for the NAAQS, for the National Ambient Air Quality Standard. And unfortunately, we're non-attainment for ozone, PM10, and PM2.5. We're one of the only communities that are non-attainment for all 3. Most noticeable, the Imperial County has a population of around 186,000 in comparison to Mexicali, who boasts a population of over 1.5 million. In your left, you can see a picture of the Calexico and Mexicali. Mr. Blancarte showed a picture at night, which I think it's more impacting than the daytime picture that I have here. Next slide, please. Okay, aside from understanding the direct air quality burden, it is also essential to review the socio-economic issues facing the community to inform the development of the plan. Individuals with the health ailments and lower socio-economic status are more vulnerable to health impacts resulting from air pollution. As you may all know, CalEnviro is a mapping tool that assesses the impacts of environmental and socio-economic factors on each census tract in the state of California. In the CalEnviro, census tracts are ranked statewide and assigned a percentile for various indicators. A high indicator percentile indicates a worse exposure or burden. The CalEnviro score is then calculated in the population burden and multiplied by the population characteristics. Environmental effects, the component is weighed 1/2 when combined with exposure component. The table on the right summarizes the range of average percentiles for sensitive populations and socioeconomic indicators for census tracts within the El Centro, Heber, and Calexico corridor. As shown in the table, the average percentile in the corridor for all the listed indicators is above 70%, with the exception of the birth weight infants and housing burden low-income household. For all that, one census tract, the high-end indicator range were the 90th percentile. Based on this data, and although it is a accomplishment to be part of AB 617, selected community, there's still much more to accomplish here in the corridor. Next slide, please. A key objective of the AB 617 is to bring environmental justice into scope of actions and disadvantaged communities. The Imperial County APCD and CCV serve as the co-chairs in the steering committee. The co-chairs worked with the respective staff to determine which applicants were eligible and most aligned with the spirit of objectives of the CAP blueprint. Ultimately, the district APCO and CCV executive director came to a consensus and the final list of the steering committee members. These 2 local organizations took the lead on forming the community steering committee, known as AB 617 CSC, and authorizing the plans. Support from the contractors was also solicited as necessary to assist with the aspects of development of the implementation of the plans, requiring particular expertise, more technical expertise more than anything. This included equipment vendors, software application development, and environmental consultants. CCV collaborated in all the aspects of the SERP and the camp, including participant recruitment, identification of key objectives, monitoring site selection, and emission reduction strategy selection. And lastly, evaluation of dissemination of results. So they were involved on the whole part of the AB 617 formation. Next slide, please. As part of the planning element of the AB 617 CSC, in order to facilitate communication between community members and the Air District, as well as to carry out emission reduction goals and objectives, the steering committee used to develop outreach opportunities to ensure communities is able to participate in the decision-making process. The steering committee formed, by the APCD and CCV fulfills the requirements of the planning element. I apologize for that. AB 617 was designated to allow members from within the selected communities to take an active role in developing their own monitoring. Hold on just a second, please. You don't want these things to happen, and it happened. My throat is getting dry. Steering committee consists of 15 members made up of 2 ex officio co-chairs and 13 community representatives. Some of these community representatives are affiliated with various organizations around the Heber, El Centro, and Calexico, including school districts, local governments, business and industry, nonprofit organizations. They were selected to participate in the steering committee based on their potential to act as leaders and contribute to technical expertise during the planning. In the event that the steering committee members are unable to perform their duties, we also have the 15 alternates that were selected to step in at any time. So we do encourage the 15 alternates to attend all meetings, just in case they need to step in for the primary members. For AB 617 year 1, we received $2 million for the implementation of the program. And in year 2, we received $6.9 million. And that was for the projects themselves. Next slide, please. As previously mentioned, the Air District, in partnership with CCV, opted to work on 2 plants, the camp and the SERP. So it's a huge task the AB 617 CSC has. These plans aim to encompass the principles of environmental justice to keep communities free of ecological destruction, engage in conversation of mutual respect with all peoples, and ensure that the right of ethical and renewable use of land and resources. The SERP and the camp represent objectives and methodologies for community air monitoring in El Centro, Heber, and Calexico corridor. Monitoring plans is a structure to follow 14 elements laid out in the community monitoring plan. So there's three objectives: to determine the reason for conducting the community air monitoring, describe how the community air monitoring will be conducted, and to identify how the data will support the action to reduce air pollution within the community. When we bring these all together, the 14 elements demonstrate how community plans conduct the air monitoring at a local scale to generate air quality data that is accurate, accessible, and transparent, and understandable, and ultimately useful towards improving air quality. Next slide, please. So these are the 4 main objectives, and all these objectives were laid out in the community monitoring plan that was approved by the AB 617 CSC. The CSC had an input in every single step of these plans, and these are the 4 that we came up with. Under the air monitoring objectives, community members are well suited for providing insight on the air quality issues in the community, and their input is necessary to ensure effective community-focused monitoring. The actions of the CSC are governed by the charter, and the CSC meetings are held monthly to learn, discuss, and vote upon important issues related to the monitoring plan. Number two, utilizing data from the existing regulatory monitoring network. There are currently 2 regulatory monitoring stations within the community. One is in El Centro and one is in Calexico. The El Centro monitoring station in El Centro is operated by the El Centro APCD, while the Calexico FM monitoring station is operated and maintained by CARB. The extensive historical data reliability of these monitors is useful to tracking the trends of the monitoring pollutants in the community. Expanding existing community air monitoring networks. There are currently 9 community air monitors in the community, which are part of the CCV identifying violations affected neighborhoods, also known as the IVAN network. These monitors are currently collect and report real-time particulate matter data. Installation of additional monitors at strategic locations would allow for the collection of more robust data that could be used to notify citizens of unhealthy air quality conditions when it's most likely to affect them, and could also be used to identify more heavily burned areas of the community. With this input from the public, the CEC selected 15 locations for additional monitors in the community. The selected locations include sites along the international border, high traffic intersections, near other emission sources, as well as near sensitive receptors like schools and residential neighborhoods. As of now, we have completed the installation of 5 monitors, and one of them is here in the APCD office at the roof, and some of them are all around in El Centro and in Calexico. We still have 10 more to go. Leveraging additional complementary monitoring. The CEC is considered various ways in which additional monitoring could be complement the existing actions proposed under the monitoring plan. One option that was considered involves stationing a high-grade monitoring equipment on the like mobile platform at the New River. This setup could be designed to monitor for a wide range of pollutants, allow the CEC to address broad range of air quality concerns. The details regarding the monitoring will be further developed at the future CEC meetings. We've had a few consultants do presentations and present what their perspective is at the New River and what is needed out there. We just haven't come with a conclusion of who will be the consultant that will work on this New River mobile unit. Next slide, please. Now we're moving on to the SERP objectives. The plan is structured to follow the planning elements laid out in the CAP blueprint, maximizing progress on reducing exposure to toxic contaminants that contribute to the cumulative exposure burden selected in the communities, and reducing exposure caused by localized PM2.5 particulate matter sources to achieve healthful levels of PM2.5 within the community. Ultimately, the plan demonstrates how the community intends to satisfy these health-based objectives through the selection of targets and implementation of local emission reduction strategies. The plan was divided into 5 main categories. Next slide, please. The 5 main strategy categories are community partnerships and public engagement, understanding the community, targets and strategies, enforcement plan, and metrics to track progress. A lot of work came into developing these strategies. We had the California Air Resources Board, the CSC, at times EPA as well. We were contacting them, and importantly, our enforcement department was very much in contact with the enforcement department and the California Air Resources Board. Some of the community partnership and public engagement members are well suited to provide the insight, quality issues in their community, and their input necessary for effective community-focused strategies. Understanding the community is very important. The plan includes robust analysis, technical assessments on existing conditions in the community, which helps the identification and selection of targets and strategies. The technical assessment discusses existing air quality policies and programs, identifies locations of emission sources and sensitive receptors, and provides an overview of existing land uses and policies. CARB developed a community level emission inventory for the criteria air pollutants and tags here in the county, and the analysis showed that the top 5 contributors to the community's PM2.5 emissions were fugitive windblown dust, fuel combustion from stationary and area-wide sources, unpaved roads, on-road and off-road mobile sources, and cooking as well. Targets and strategies. The emission reduction targets and strategies in the plan were developed using information compiled for the technical assessment and input provided by the public and the CSC. Ultimately, the strategies chart path toward the continuing long-term reductions of PM 2.5 and tax in the community. The plan includes 28 strategies in total, which include regulatory strategies, air permitting strategies, enforcement strategies, program strategies, and many others. The enforcement plan. The enforcement plan of regulatory CARB and MPCD staff is critical to achieving air quality goals. The plan includes 3-year retrospective review of enforcement in the community to inform the development of the targets, strategies, and enforcement plan. This review includes summary of complaints, enforcement to the community, development of targets, and the resolution and listing of permitted facilities and their type, their number type, their inspections conducted, a list of notices of violations and notices to comply issued, and an assessment of compliance by CARB and APCD rules and regulations. Let's see. Okay, the last one, metrics and track progress. Metrics that can be used to track progress are critically in helping community understand whether emission reduction projects are achieving what's intended as an objective under the AB 617 and objectives. For this reason, the plan includes specific metrics of each 28 emission reduction strategies. These metrics will be tracked on an annual basis and reported to the APCD annual progress report, which will be made available to the public no later than October 1st. That's our target. And every year following the implementation. A little bit further more on this, the SERP, under the CSC's direction, we broke it down into Tier 1 and Tier 2 projects. Tier 1 projects are well-defined projects where the project partners have been identified and projects have been identified itself, like wood burning device program that we're currently doing in Calexico, paving projects that we've done around the corridor, one in particular under AB 617 in Calexico, and the air quality filtration systems at schools. We have 2 schools under the AB 617 in Heber that have been completed, and we're doing Dianza at the moment. We also have 2 under another program outside the corridor that we're also doing the air quality filtration systems. Hopefully, by the end of the program, we're able to do all the schools in the corridor and future-wise expand it to the rest of the Imperial Valley. So overall, having important stakeholders at the table, such as APCD, environmental justice groups, school officials, industry, and the community in general, has led to the El Centro Heber Calexico corridor to be a successful program. The next slide, please. And that would be my presentation. Does anybody have any questions?
Well, I would just say thanks for the presentation. It's good to see. I noticed in a lot of the strategies, it leads with sort of community, a lot of sort of community involvement and understanding local communities and all of that. It's good to see that is a standard for you, and I see that across a lot of the counties, a lot of the agencies, that it leads with sort of understanding community and robust city engagement. So yeah, unless there are questions for anyone else, I think I don't have any specific questions.
One more quick presentation. I think Katie Burnworth is on the line from APCD to give a presentation on Salton Sea. We're running short on time, so let's.
What is APC? What is that?
The Imperial County Air Pollution Control District.
Okay, got it.
But Belinda's also a staff person at APC.
So who's doing this? Katie?
Katie Burnworth, yes.
With the Salton Sea in the background of the Zoom.
Yeah. Okay, so as you mentioned, I'm Katie Burnworth. I work for Imperial County Air Pollution Control District, and today I'm going to give you guys kind of a big overview on the Salton Sea. If you can go to the next slide. So just a little background history on the Salton Sea. periodically through ancient times, the Salton Sea would, or the Colorado River being a vast wild river that it is, it would breach and it would flood either into what is the Salton Sea area or the Gulf of California. In 1901, that is really when the founders of the Imperial County were trying to come and make Imperial County into that viable agriculture area that it is today. And so they made what is called the Imperial Canal to bring water from the Colorado River into the Imperial Valley. And if we know anything about the Colorado River, we know that there's a lot of silt that comes in it. And our founders actually also found that out the hard way. And in 1904, the Colorado River actually blocked up the Imperial Canal. So they created another heading to try to redivert that water. But then in 1905, the Colorado River breached and all of the into the Salton Sea, and all of that water from the Colorado River from 1905 into 1907 actually went straight into the Salton Basin, which is actually where the Salton Sea lies today. It took 18 months to stop the breach, and it created a 328 square mile area of the Salton Sea. Another fun fact about the Salton Sea is California's largest lake. And if you can go to the next slide.
Is that how it was created, from that breach?
Yeah.
So it wasn't a lake before, it was just a basin, and that breach created it?
No, so over time, in ancient times, so it was before in the 1700s, it was what was called ancient Lake Cahuilla. Okay. And so then the salt trough would actually drain out and go back into the Colorado River, and then it would flow and redivert back into the Gulf of California. So, and then in the 1950s, the California Fish and Wildlife actually stocked the lake with sargo, corvina, croaker, and other salt-tolerant fish species, which made the place a very popular tourist attraction for fishermen, for boat races. They started building marinas and resorts around it. They actually referred to it as the Salton Riviera. As if you can see by the pictures, it was a very, poppin', beautiful place. And if you can go to the next slide. And so not only in this time was it a beautiful place, also in 1970 is when you kind of really saw the decline of the Salton Sea, when tropical storms came in and they essentially destroyed the marinas and the resorts. But during that time, the Salton Sea actually became a really important part of the Colorado River system and for habitat as well. So the Salton Sea supports over 400 species of birds because it's an important stop for these birds on their Pacific Flyway. So when they're migrating north from Mexico to Canada or back down south to Mexico, this is one of their last few stopovers to actually get some food and eat along their journey. It's also the home for the endangered species, which is your desert pupfish. And then also, as I mentioned, it is part of the Colorado River system. So it actually, all the agriculture return flow from the Imperial Coachella valleys go into this. And it's the stopping point for the New and Alamo rivers. And if you can go to the next slide. So in 2003, there's what was called the Quantification Settlement Agreement, which essentially was the largest ag to urban water transfer in history. It diverted about 300,000 acre feet out of the Imperial Valley. And to do that, to transfer those waters, our farmers here had to get really good at conserving water. And so less water used on the crops meant less water going into the Salton Sea. So when the water transfer was negotiated, they knew that there was going to be a rapid recession of the shoreline because there was going to be less water going into it. So to protect the salinity levels of it, they actually put mitigation water until the end of 2017. But since then, we've actually seen a really exponential increase in the salinity of the lake, and then also in the exposure of the shoreline. So as it sits today, the Salton Sea is about 60 parts per thousand, which is about twice as salty as the Pacific Ocean.
Yeah, the ocean's probably 0.26 parts per million. So that's double.
Yeah. And then if you see here today, the only living fish species that lives in the Salton Sea are actually tilapia, but it's not very uncommon to see big, massive die-offs and their skeleton remains on the shoreline of the Salton Sea.
Not my
And as
favorite
you can
fish.
see,
Not my favorite fish. Sucks for them.
and then actually, the red part in there, those are actually, they actually get algae blooms all over the sea because the water gets really stagnant. And so when algae blooms over that, it actually suffocates everything underneath it because it can't, since it's that layer of algae, it doesn't allow oxygen to get into the water that the fish need to survive.
Right.
And so if you can go to the next slide. So as I mentioned before, they knew that the Salton Sea shoreline was going to recede. And if you look here on these numbers, you actually see that as years go on, the number of playa exacerbates every year. And by the end of 2028, they're expected to see about 48,000 exposed acres of playa. By the end of 2019, there's 24,000, so we're about halfway there already, and which equates to about 37.5 square miles of exposed playa to date. If you can go to the next slide. Okay, so upon this, since the state of California, under the Quantification Settlement Agreement, was supposed to restore the Salton Sea. And 15 years had passed and they hadn't seen any action. So the water agencies and everybody involved in the QSA went to the State Water Resources Control Board and said, hey, nothing's being done. Our air quality here is being impacted and our habitat's dying off. And so they entered in what was the stipulated order for agreement, where it gave them milestone and targets that the state was supposed to implement construction projects. And half of those projects were supposed to be for air quality mitigation and half for habitat. To date, there's only been 112 acres completed, and that goes to about 0.17 square miles of exposed playa. And by the end of 2020, their milestone targets, since they haven't met them from 2018 to now, of 3,500 acres or 5.5 square miles. It's anticipated again that they won't meet their requirements this year also. And if you can go to the next slide. So how does APCD come into the play for this? So we have our air quality mitigation rules, or fugitive dust rules, which are Rule 800. So the main pollutant that we're worried about at the Salton Sea is particulate matter 10. So PM10, other known as fugitive dust. And so,
I'm listening.
And, oh, okay. So since the Salton Sea is a man-made source, it falls within our Rule 800s of this. And if you can go to the next slide. And so in particular, what our rules are is Rule 804. So this regulation is made to reduce the amount of PM10 that comes off of open areas. And so it's pretty much any parcel that's in Imperial County that's 3 or more acres, then you have to apply what are called best available control measures. If you can go to the next slide. Best available control measures mean that you have to have water or dust suppressants to all areas, establish 50% vegetation coverage on all previously disturbed surfaces. You can put gravel or you can put a chemical stabilizer. And for the Salton Sea, since it's such a different area of its own, we have what's called, we allow the property owners to do what we call alternative vacuum. And so pretty much we'll allow a property owner to come to APCDA with a technical plan to show how they can demonstrate that their surface is stabilized and fall within our rule set, and keeps it where there's less than a 20% opacity coming off the site. Once we do that, we actually send that technical review up to the US EPA, and then we have to get their approval on it. So it's this long, lengthy process. And
everybody has control of the dust. You just have to have a plan to control your dust. Got it.
Exactly. And so on this, so the biggest thing I always like to tell people is that vacuum isn't just a dust control measure that you implement and then can step away from. It has to be monitored and maintained over time. And if you can go to the next slide. And so, recently Imperial County has actually had to take enforcement actions on some of the projects that have been incomplete or not completed at the Salton Sea. Most recently, we issued violations of Rule 804 on about 600 acres, which is roughly a square mile of exposed playa on what is the Red Hill Bay project area. This project area is supposed to be shallow flood mixed with Salton Sea and Alamo River water to flood the basin, which then would recreate habitat for fish-eating birds, and then it would also keep the dust down. But since the project began construction in 2014, it's still not completed. And so what they did was they'd cut into the soil and they took an area that was already emissive and made the problem even worse. Because on soil you have a crust that creates, and when you take that off, all of the protection is essentially gone. And so we were getting several complaints, and we actually saw opacity readings where you pretty much did wind events where you pretty much couldn't see in front of your face.
Wow.
Yeah, and so right now we're working on what's called a stipulated order for abatement on the project site, whereas now Imperial County Air Pollution Control District comes in and we have orders that hold them accountable to increments of progress throughout that.
This seems like a lot to manage. How is all this paid for?
So like the projects, or the oversight of it in Imperial County?
Yeah, all of it. Is this just borne on the property taxes of the residents of Imperial County, or is there federal participation? How's all this maintained?
Okay, so our oversight, obviously, for Imperial County's wise comes from the Imperial County funds, specifically from the Air District. This project here is funded by the federal government. And then what came out of the QSA is a $133 million fund that parts of it includes air quality mitigation for the Salton Sea. There's also been various bonds that have passed, so Prop 68 allocated funding for it. And it's we're still, like now we have funding available, but we're having a really hard time getting the agencies who are working on it, specifically the state and the Imperial Irrigation District, are struggling to get projects on the ground. So does that answer your question?
Yes.
Okay.
All right, I'll hold my question so we can get through it. I'll get a lot of little questions here and there.
Okay, no worries. And if you can go to the next slide. And so another project area that's the state of California is implementing is what's called species conservation habitat. So this is going to cover about 4,000 acres and about 6 square miles of exposed playa. The construction hasn't began yet. It should begin by the fall of this year. They actually just awarded a contractor to hire it, to do it. And the price tag on this project is about $212 million.
Right.
Since we know this area is already emissive and we already are seeing air quality problems come off of it, and they're out of compliance. And so we're working with the state to go into a stipulated order for agreement with them as well that'll apply temporary dust control measures until the project's completed. So they're pretty much laying out, like you call it a roadmap to back them, is kind of what I've been referring it to. So they put these temporary measures in that'll stay temporarily, and then they're going to come back and flood it with water. This project is going to be used, the water source is going to be the New River and then Salton Sea water as well. If you go to the next slide. So future impacts of the Salton Sea. So what we're seeing now, you can pause it so it's not so rigid. But yeah, how I mentioned, we had talked for years and years about how, the receding shoreline of the Salton Sea was going to create these dust bowl, these wind events. And unfortunately, the state of California didn't act fast enough, and now they're trying to play catch up, and those wind events are here. And so that's why us at Imperial County Air Pollution Control District are, trying to strategically, go and make these enforcement actions and hold people accountable to it, because, right now, since Imperial County is already a dry and dusty place, we live in the desert, we're right next to the binational border, pretty much our cup of pollutions is full. We've taken all the low-hanging fruit and applied, mitigation measures, and if the Salton Sea comes in, it's going to overflow our cup, right? And so then it's going to make us where we're not in the federal attainment within the state standards and the federal standards as well. And that directly relates to all of our highway funding and other funding sources as well. And Imperial County, being it's already considered a disadvantaged community, we really can't afford to lose that. So us at the Air District are working really hard to get these projects implemented on the ground in a timely manner to actually solve the problem.
Wow. So your cup is full, and this problem seems like it's trending in a certain direction.
Mm-hmm.
What do we do?
Yeah, I mean, we, for a long time, I think we all, wanted to just be a partner, and, the wind events and the dust wasn't here. And now that's why we're going these hard enforcement route, where there's fines that are associated with, and then they're daily violations.
I mean, is there a pathway to reverse course?
Yes.
I don't, I mean, you can, once the irrigation district could go back to the State Water Resources Control Board and, ask for more mitigation water. They can ask for a water allocation for this project. I think this was just a big lessons learned of when they made the QSA, they didn't give a water allotment to mitigate the environmental impacts, that was created by this. There's ways to make habitat out of there, but they're very costly. And, but yeah, so we're just kind of working together with our scientists here and get projects on the ground that are very effective and that work.
Okay. Okay, thanks, Katie.
You're welcome.
Questions, anyone? Well, I have to tell you, Supervisor Plancarte, I have a new respect for you and the work that you have to do down at Imperial. I'll tell you that much. You certainly have challenges, and I appreciate. I'd heard about Salton Sea. I hadn't taken the tour. I had been invited, I believe in the past, but I look forward to doing that. And I have to tell you, I think more people need to know about this. I think more people need to know about it.
Well, definitely a challenging task. We definitely have an excellent team in place to get, some of this moving forward, but it is not just an Imperial County issue.
Right.
We've heard where there's counties up in Riverside area where people have called 911 to report the smell of rotten eggs, only to find out that there was a wind shift and it's coming from the Salton Sea during die-offs. So it affects all of us, and obviously, the particles flow everywhere. So it is something that we really need to work on together. We have the whole team here at your disposal. Any questions you may have, feel free to call on any of our team members.
Well, I mean, it's certainly a lot to think about here. I think what I've learned, or what I've become more aware of, is all the things that we can learn from Imperial County, given the unique situation Imperial County around Imperial County's environment. It's binational border, all the different relationships there, in order to make sure that those two communities can really think about how to address solutions comprehensively and coordinate with one another. Also, you already have sort of climate issues being in a very dry place, and that's exacerbated by the situation with Salton Sea. Is the situation with Salton Sea reversible? Is it going to accelerate due to climate? we be talking about more about resiliency? You know, what can I think about the way SCAG and the way it represents the region and talks about the region? I think we need to have a deeper understanding of how this issue with Salton Sea impacts Riverside County, San Bernardino County, Orange County, Los Angeles County. So yeah, so I certainly have learned a lot. I don't know that I have any questions aside from what can I do and what should SCAG be doing in order to help support the challenges, the unique challenges of Imperial County. So what do I need to know that you need from SCAG?
Well, you know, definitely we have the committee structure in place within SCAG, especially within the environmental group, that can perhaps begin to look at and begin to get educated on some of these. And we can definitely facilitate those presentations to get that going. We recently began the formation of a health equity group made up of, you know, community members to address this situation and also help in getting input and sharing some of that information. So I think it's definitely one of the things that we can begin to educate SCAG about and definitely look forward to starting to do so as we move on.
My initial thoughts are, I think you're right that we need to take a look at the makeup and the representation and the agenda of the of the EEC committee at SCAG. Make sure that there is that this issue is present in this year's work plan. Secondly, you bring up health equity. Long Beach, my city, is one of just 3 cities in the whole state with its own public health department. And so, it's taken time to build the support within my own city council to support health and health equity. You think about it, the debates that we've had over the years are typically, should we invest our dollars into health? The health department is something that you don't think you need them until you have a health emergency, but you wish you have invested in them when you do have a health emergency. The pandemic has really shown that we've invested in it, but we should have invested more. And I would say the connection between your health equity task force, I think we should create some link between that and this council on racial equity that we're moving forward with this year on SCAG. Perhaps we should think of you or someone that is from, I believe you agreed to sit on that task force, right? Okay, so I want to make sure that you have some staff support that's ready to talk about your efforts around health equity and bring that to the table, because we're going to use that sort of as a clearinghouse to get recommendations on how SCAG could advance best practices across the region that really are centered on equity. And so that is one connection that I want to make sure, David, that we make, is that connection between the health equity work in Imperial County and our committee.
Absolutely. I'll make sure that we're on top of that for sure.
Fantastic. Well, I don't have any additional questions, Supervisor.
Well, we definitely have an IOU card here for you so that when we are able to do a physical tour, we can, bring you and actually take you to the sand dunes. We will definitely do that since you've never been to them. And, if there's anything that some of our other electeds would like to add, Mr. Hodge, Mr. Pitmore, Cheryl, anything you guys want to add?
I'd like to say something. It's with all that's going on with the Salton Sea and the Imperial Valley's kind of gotten a stigma of being a desert county with extremely hot temperatures and a stinky lake. But the Imperial Valley has so much more to offer. Mm-hmm. And we're working on those things to correct them. But we need to try to get rid of that stigma so that it promotes more growth in our area. So that people, there's a lot to do here, and there's a lot of recreation, and there's a lot of activities that can be done, and there's a lot of room for growth that we can do here in the county. So.
Right.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Hodge. Anyone else?
Real quick, this is Cheryl. Before the noise starts up again, I want to thank you so much for showing an interest in our county and learning more about what we have to offer, and also our challenges and opportunities. I do believe we had a discussion with regard to the Salton Sea, and it is going to be on the Energy and Environment Committee, I think, for their December meeting. It was brought up also at the Ledge Committee, because we want to make sure that the state and feds continue to legislate, or at least think about including funding for Salton Sea and New River cleanup. So I think Energy and Environment Committee and Ledge Committee will be at the forefront of a lot of the issues having to do with Imperial County. It was mentioned here today, and to the extent we can get rid of or change the whole phrase of disadvantaged communities, it's just one of those things that I think it's a labeling that just is not appropriate. So to the extent we could get that phrase disadvantaged communities erased would be fantastic.
And I you know, to a degree, I agree with you on that sentiment, given the community I represent. And I've heard a lot of different labels, but there hasn't been sort of consensus on the nomenclature. I've heard opportunity communities, I've heard a number of things, and there really hasn't been consensus. And perhaps SCAG could come to some consensus on how we talk about it, and that would have an impact. Right. Okay. Anyone else? All right. Well, David, supervisor, everyone, it's 4:30 on a Friday. We ended a little bit early, I think. I blocked off till 5 o'clock for this. Thank you so much for the opportunity to learn about your region. I certainly have learned about it. I'm going to be following up with David and Alana. I want to make sure that we can I want to put a summary in the next SCAG newsletter about this tour, sort of highlighting what I've learned and what we've learned. So we'll work on that together. And I have 5 more counties to learn about. So thanks for being the first.
Well, thank you, and stay healthy, everybody, and look forward to seeing all of you again.
All right. Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you.